It's that time of the month. We're going to look at the voter registration shifts for September. And the usual disclaimers are, this is not my own data, it's from Michael Prusser, associated with Decision Desk. Not every state reports their data. If it wasn't here, it wasn't available. And I would recommend putting some weight on this data, but don't go all out. These numbers are not necessarily going to tell you who's going to vote and how they're going to vote in the next election. So we've got around 20 states to get through. Let's dive in. We're going to go quick. We'll start with the most competitive state. That was Pennsylvania. So let's go through it. In the last election, Trump won it by 1.7. And since the last update in August, Republicans gained 373. The Dems went down 5,100. Other is up 4,900. Now there could be different reasons for some of these changes. There could be some cleanup of the voter rolls. Occasionally there's a primary and voters might change their registration for that. And there's also just good old-fashioned party switching. And keep in mind about legacy Democrats that might have been voting Republican a long time, but they never bothered to change their voter registration. Legacy Republicans, I would think, are going to be to a much lesser extent. Now overall here we've got an active party registration in this state. It's over 8.3 million. And now Prusser is including if there's automatic voter registration in the state. And this state has front end. That means people are automatically registered to vote when they're at the DMV, but they can opt out up front. So the total registration for the Republicans in this state is almost 3.5 million. The Dems are a little over 3.5. Other is at 1.3 million. The advantage for the Dems is 53,600. Back in 24, it was much higher for the Dems, 286K. And if you go all the way back to 16, the Dem advantage was over 916,000. So we've seen this month after month. Generally, Dems seem to be losing in this state. It's not a huge deal if it happened here or there, but if it's month after month, that does start to become more important. So now we're going to zip through the rest of these states. The next closest one was Nevada. Trump captured it by 3.1. Republicans went down 744. Dems just about the same, but 10 more. Other is up big time here, over 10,600. Here they have back-end automatic voter registration. That means you're automatically registered, period. You cannot opt out unless it's after the fact. So it is what it is, but the Dems have an advantage here of about over 3,700. That's a little bit lower than in 24, where they were at 7,100. And going back to 16, it was clearly higher at over 88,000. Next, in North Carolina, Trump had it at 3.2. Republicans minus 667. Dems a lot more than that at 4,400. Other is down 4,800. Republican advantage is almost 95,000. Now, there is no automatic voter registration in this state, so that's going to be different than those other states that are going to have a lot more of independents or other. That's what you're going to get if you don't pick either of the two major parties. But this state already has more other than it is, more than the GOP, more than the Dems. The GOP advantage here is almost 95,000. That is a big change from in 24, where the Dems were actually up more than 105K. And back in 16, Dems had a huge advantage, 646K. This stat is good to point out because if voter registration was everything, Dems would have been dominating every single federal race here back in 16. That didn't happen. Let's keep going. In New Jersey, Harris got it by 5.9. Republicans gained 985. Dems dropped off over 2K. Other is up 8,000. The Dems have a huge advantage here of 861K. That is lower than in 24, where it was 905. And it's very similar to what it was back in 16, where it was again about 862K. Next, in New Mexico, Harris got it by an even 6. Republicans gained over 1K. That's more than the Dems at 562. But other is the big winner at 6,800. The Dems have a comfortable advantage here of 133,700. That is down from 154,900. But back in 16, it was just under 200K. So more downward trajectory, but the Dems are still in the driver's seat. How about in Colorado? Harris was at about 11%. GOP down 722. Dems minus 635. Other is up huge, over 10K. And that is going to also dwarf both the two major parties. The Dems have a big advantage here of an even 100,000. It is a little bit lower than in 24, where it was 110,000. But back in 16, the Dems were only up 7,000. That shows you how the state has clearly gotten bluer, and eventually the voter registration has caught up. Next, in Florida, Trump was at 13.1. We got some cleanup here. Republicans down 11,000. Dems minus 37,500. Other is down almost 33K. The GOP advantage here is massive. It's over 1.3 million. Back in 24, the advantage was 1.08 million. And back in 16, Dems had the advantage of over 327,000. Massive amount of movement here over the past 10 years. The next state is Iowa. Trump got it by 13.2. Republicans gained at 633. A bit of a drop off here for the Dems at 77. Other is up 4,200. Republican advantage 193K. Back in 24, it was lower. It was 173K. In 16, it was way lower at 27,900. In Rhode Island, Harris won it by 13.8. Republicans gained here 317. Dems dropped off 188. Other is up 1491. The Dem advantage here is 158K. It's a little lower than 169 back in 24. Back in 16, it was way higher at 237,000. In Delaware, Harris got it by 14.7. Republicans went down 106. Dems more than that at 366. Other is up 1635. Dem advantage 133K. That's again a little bit lower than 145,000 back in 24. In 16 though, the Dems had a smaller advantage of 131,400. In Kansas, Trump got it by 16.1. GOP dropped 375. Dems dropped 144. Other is up 2,600. GOP advantage 402K. That's a bit higher than 391 in 24, and back in 16, it was 357K. In Nebraska, Trump got it by 20.5. GOP dropped off 284. Dems dropped off 540. Other is up 599. GOP advantage 293K. Back in 24, it was 286, and back in 16, it was 214. In Utah, Trump got it by 21.6. Republicans here dropped off more than the Dems, 131. Dems are down 20. Other is up 1142. GOP advantage is way up there at 685K, but that is just a little bit lower than at 24 where it was 689. But back in 16, it was way lower. It was 416,000. In Louisiana, Trump captured it by 22%. Republicans went down 160. Dems way more at 2733. Other is also down over 3,100. This is a red state, but it's the Dems that had the advantage of 42,600. But that is dwindling. Back in 24, it was over 86,000. And back in 16, it was way, way higher at 451,000. In pretty much every video I say at some point this is going to flip. The GOP is going to be ahead. In Maryland, Harris got it by 28.5. Republicans dropped off 36. Here the Dems had a solid gain, over 1,100. Other is up 4,700. The Dems have a gigantic advantage here of over 1.2 million. But it is about 2,000 lower than it was back in 24. But back in 16, the advantage for the Dems was lower. It was over 1.1 million. In South Dakota, Trump won the state by 29.2. Not a lot of population here, but Republicans did gain 87. Dems went down 194. Other is up 153. Republican advantage 177K. In 24, it was 170K, and back in 16, it was 81K. Let's keep going. We've got Kentucky. Trump was at 30.5% here. Republicans did gain 1,400. Dems dropped off 1,100. Other is up 1,800. GOP advantage here is almost 198,000. That is clearly higher than 150,000 back in 24. And in 16, the Dems actually had the advantage here of 355,000. A lot of legacy Democrats here. The voter registration data is finally catching up to this state's super red status. In Oklahoma, Trump won this one by 34.3. Republicans had a nice gain here of 3,800. Dems also went up 800. Other is up 4,200. A very convincing GOP advantage here at 661,700. Back in 24, it was lower. It was 606. And back in 16, it was way lower. Only 127,000 advantage for the GOP. These states are only getting redder. We've got Idaho. Trump won it by 36.5. Minimal change here. Republicans went down 131. Dems went down 39. Other is up an even 100. Republican advantage here 506K. Back in 24, it was 496K. And back in 16, it was way lower, 306. One state to go. This is West Virginia. It's a super red state. It's Trump here at 41.9. The Republicans gained 1474. The Dems went down 199. Other is up 1015. GOP advantage 168,200. That is clearly higher than in 24 where it was 144K. And this state also flipped going back to 16. Dems were up pretty big here, 172,700. But we all know the state was super red on a federal level way before that. So those are all the states. And I actually had a summary and an ending recorded for this video, but I ran into some problems, so I'm going to have to just wrap it up here. I don't have the table this month with all the available states, but overall, most of the data does tend to favor the Republicans yet again. It matters, but it matters to a point, so let me know in the comments. What do you think about any of the data this month? Is there some silver lining here for the Dems? And how much do you think these shifts translate into the actual election results? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to help support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.